So anyone who's ever, messed around with computer graphics knows that DirectX has always been pretty much a Windows-only kind of thing.
Right,
But what if you wanted to run it on Linux?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft just open-sourced another piece of their DirectX Shader Compiler.
Okay.
It's called the DXIL Validator Hash.
Interesting.
We found an article about it from Phoenix.
Oh, yeah, I know that site.
That Linux hardware site. So they break it all down for us.
Yeah, they do a great job with that kind of stuff.
And what's really interesting here is that Microsoft has been gradually open sourcing parts of this compiler since 2017.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a sudden shift or anything.
Yeah.
There's definitely a pattern emerging here.
Definitely a pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone listening who might not be super deep into DirectX every day,
Right.
let's back up a sec.
Sure.
What's the big deal about shaders?
Okay, so shaders
And why do we need a special compiler for them?
Shaders are like mini programs that run directly on your graphics card.
Gotcha.
They're what make modern games.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
graphics look so amazing.
Oh.
They control things like lighting, shadows, textures, all the good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Yeah.
graphics cards, they don't speak the same language as our usual programming languages.
Right.
So that's where the DirectX Shader Compiler comes in.
Okay.
It translates the human-readable shader code into something the graphics card can understand.
So it's like a specialized
Yeah.
interpreter then
Exactly.
bridging the gap between the software and the hardware.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And the DXIL part stands for DirectX Intermediate Language.
Okay.
It's kind of like a middle ground,
Right.
like a stepping stone in the translation process.
Makes sense.
So imagine
Yeah.
you're a developer working on Linux, and you want to use DirectX shaders.
Yeah.
Until recently,
Right.
you would have had to reverse engineer the validation process, which is incredibly time-consuming and prone to errors.
Yeah, that sounds like a massive headache.
It is.
So how does this newly open-sourced validator hash
Okay.
change things?
The DXIL validator
Right.
is like a strict quality control inspector for shader code.
Gotcha.
It checks if the code follows all the rules of DXIL, ensuring it's safe
Okay.
and compatible.
Right.
The validator hash, on the other hand,
Okay.
acts like a digital fingerprint of this validated code.
Oh, okay.
It's a cryptographic hash generated based on the shader's content.
So if I'm understanding this right, the hash is like a guarantee.
Yeah.
It proves that the code has been properly vetted
Yes.
and it hasn't been tampered with.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's a crucial security measure,
I bet.
especially on open platforms like Linux,
Right?
where you might be downloading shader code from various sources.
Right. You don't know where it's coming from.
Exactly.
But couldn't someone with malicious intent still find a way to sneak in harmful code? Even with the hash?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the complexities of security in an open source world.
Uh-huh.
So while the hash provides a strong layer of protection,
Yep.
it's not foolproof.
Right.
There are always potential vulnerabilities
Yeah.
that could be exploited.
Of course.
However,
Yeah.
open sourcing the hash algorithm allows more security researchers to scrutinize it.
Right. More eyes on the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Potentially identifying and addressing weaknesses more quickly.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is.
More openness can lead to both increased security and increased risk.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And it underscores the importance of a collaborative approach to security in open source software development.
Collaboration is key.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. This seemingly small technical detail
Right.
could actually have ripple effects throughout the entire DirectX ecosystem.
Potentially.
But why would Microsoft, a company known for its proprietary software,
Right.
embrace this open source approach? It seems counterintuitive, right?
It might seem that way at first,
Yeah.
but if we consider Microsoft's recent actions,
Okay.
a pattern emerges.
Okay, like what?
Well, they've been making some interesting moves towards open source in various areas.
Yeah, you mentioned Azure Linux 3.0 earlier.
Yeah.
They're not just supporting Linux.
Right.
They're actively developing their own distribution,
Exactly.
specifically for the Azure cloud platform.
Uh-huh.
That's a pretty big statement.
It is. It signals a strategic shift within Microsoft.
Okay.
They're recognizing the importance of Linux,
Right.
especially in the cloud where it's already dominant.
Yeah, for sure.
Open sourcing the DXIL Validator Hash aligns with this broader trend.
So it's not just about being nice and sharing their toys.
Nope.
There's a calculated strategy at play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about staying relevant,
Mm-hmm.
attracting talent,
Right.
and potentially gaining a competitive edge in the rapidly evolving world of technology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I get.
But before we get too deep into Microsoft's motivations,
Okay.
let's take a closer look at the specific implications of this open sourcing move for developers.
Right.
What challenges and opportunities does it present?
So, for developers working with DirectX on Linux, this is huge.
Oh, yeah.
It removes a huge barrier to entry.
Okay.
You know, previously they had to rely on reverse engineered solutions for shader validation,
Yeah.
which was super time consuming and error prone.
Yeah, of course.
Now they have access to the official open source implementation
Wow.
of the validator hash.
So this levels the playing field,
Yeah.
making it easier for developers outside of Windows
Yeah,
to create and distribute DirectX compatible applications.
precisely.
This could lead to like a surge in innovation then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like imagine indie game developers on Linux
Yeah,
finally having the tools to leverage the full power of DirectX.
exactly. Or even scientists using DirectX shaders for like real-time data visualization.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there are tons of possibilities.
Okay, so I'm starting to get a sense of the possibilities here.
Yeah.
But let's dive a little deeper into the technical side of things.
Okay.
How does this open source hash algorithm actually work?
So,
Is it something our listener could wrap their head around?
at its core, it's all about cryptography.
Okay.
The algorithm takes the validated DXIL code
Uh-huh.
and generates a unique hash value,
Okay.
kind of like a digital fingerprint.
Oh, okay.
If even a single bit of the code changes,
Mm-hmm.
the hash value will be completely different.
Wow.
This makes it incredibly difficult
Yeah.
for someone to tamper with the code without being detected.
So it's not just about checking if the code is correct.
Right.
It's about verifying its integrity and authenticity.
Right.
Okay.
And this is super important in the context of open source software.
Right.
When you're downloading code from various sources,
Uh-huh.
you need a way to ensure
Yeah.
that it's the genuine article and hasn't been modified maliciously.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
This open source approach reminds me of what Microsoft did with DocumentDB,
Oh,
their NoSQL database service.
right.
They open sourced these server-side components,
Uh-huh.
allowing anyone to create a DocumentDB compatible database.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It really highlights Microsoft's evolving philosophy towards open source.
Interesting.
They're recognizing that in many cases, fostering a vibrant open source community around their technologies can benefit everyone involved.
But isn't there a risk with this open approach?
What do you mean?
Like, could it fragment the DirectX ecosystem?
Hmm.
What if everyone starts implementing their own versions of the validator hash
Right.
and things become incompatible?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Fragmentation is always a potential challenge in the open source world.
Right.
However, by providing a clear, official implementation of the hash algorithm,
Okay.
Microsoft is setting a standard that others can adhere to.
Got
It's like
it.
providing a common language that everyone can speak.
So it's about fostering collaboration
Exactly.
while mitigating the risks of fragmentation.
Precisely.
Makes sense.
And it's worth noting that the open source community often excels at self-regulation and collaboration.
Oh, interesting.
There are established processes for managing open source projects, ensuring quality, and maintaining compatibility.
All right, let's shift gears for a moment
Yeah.
and talk about the potential impact on the competitive landscape.
Sure.
You mentioned Vulkan earlier, which
Yeah.
is an open source graphics API
Right.
designed to be cross-platform.
Mm-hmm.
How does this move by Microsoft affect their rivalry?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
By making DirectX more accessible outside of Windows,
Okay.
Microsoft is potentially making it a more attractive option for developers
Yeah.
who might otherwise choose Vulkan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a strategic move to broaden their appeal
Mhm.
and maintain their position in the graphics world.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the implications.
Yeah.
Could this actually shift the balance of power in the graphics world?
It's certainly possible.
Wow.
Vulkan has gained significant traction in recent years.
Yeah, it has.
Due to its open source nature and cross-platform capabilities,
Right.
Microsoft's move to open source more DirectX components
Mm-hmm.
could be seen as a counteroffensive, a way to level the playing field and compete more effectively.
So it's not just about technology.
Nope.
It's about strategic maneuvering and market dominance.
Absolutely.
Wow, this is getting intense.
It is, and it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out in the coming years.
Yeah.
Will we see a resurgence of DirectX adoption as it becomes more accessible?
Right.
Will developers embrace the open source tools and contribute to a thriving ecosystem?
Good questions.
Only time will tell.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Glad to hear it.
But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we connect this back to the listener.
Okay.
What does all of this mean for the average person who might not be a developer or a tech enthusiast?
Right.
Why should they care about open source DirectX code?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it boils down to innovation and accessibility.
Okay.
When technologies become more open, it often leads to a wider range of applications and benefits.
Like what?
Well, for gamers, this could mean more games being ported to different platforms.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Cool.
For creatives, it could mean new and innovative tools for design, animation, and visualization.
Oh, wow.
And for everyone, it could mean a more vibrant and diverse technological landscape.
So it's about empowering people and expanding the possibilities of what technology can achieve.
Precisely.
That's awesome.
And that's a future I think we can all be excited about. Okay, so we've talked about how open sourcing DirectX could lead to more innovation and a more diverse tech landscape. But are there any other examples of Microsoft doing this? Like, have they open sourced anything else that's had like a really big impact?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest ones I can think of is the .NET platform. Remember how we were talking about DirectX being a Windows-only thing for a long time?
Yeah.
Well, .NET was kind of in the same boat.
Right. Yeah, .NET. That rings a bell, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details, to be honest.
Okay, so think of it as like a foundational framework for building all sorts of applications, from web apps to desktop software, even games.
Oh, okay.
It was really deeply intertwined with the Windows ecosystem.
So what changed?
So Microsoft started gradually open sourcing parts of .NET, culminating in .NET Core back in 2016, which is now entirely open source.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they basically took one of their core development frameworks and just made it accessible to everyone, regardless of what platform they're using.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's been a huge success. Now you can run .NET applications on Linux, Mac OS, even mobile devices.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's totally transformed the landscape of .NET development.
So we've got DirectX components, Azure Linux, DocumentDB, and now .NET. It's starting to feel like a pretty clear pattern here.
Definitely.
But the big question is why?
Yeah, why is Microsoft doing this?
Like, is it purely altruistic? I have a hard time believing that.
I think it's more like a mix of factors.
Okay.
As we talked about, there are definitely strategic benefits in a world that's increasingly dominated by open source technologies.
Right.
Microsoft can't afford to stay isolated.
So it's partly about staying relevant and competitive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I think there's also a genuine recognition within Microsoft that embracing open source fosters innovation.
That makes sense.
Like when you make your tools and technologies accessible to a wider community, you tap into this vast pool of talent and creativity.
More minds working on a problem.
Something
more perspectives, more potential solutions.
Precisely.
And it's not just about solving existing problems. It's about sparking entirely new ideas and applications that wouldn't have been possible within a closed ecosystem.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has been fun.
We've gone from this seemingly minor news item about a DirectX Validator Hash.
I know, right?
To a much broader discussion about Microsoft's evolving relationship with open source and the implications for the future of technology.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Technical details, strategic motivations, competitive landscapes, even philosophical shifts within one of the biggest tech companies in the world.
So I want to leave our listener with one final thought to ponder.
Okay, shoot.
If this trend continues, if Microsoft and other tech giants continue to embrace open source, what kind of world will we be living in 10 years from now?
That's a good question.
What unexpected innovations will emerge? What new possibilities will unfold?
Who knows?
It's an exciting time to be witnessing this transformation, and I, for one, can't wait to see what the future holds.